for like another hour, maybe. So as you were told, the title of my talk today is "The Bible is Your Story." So I'm going to get into that. But before I do, I want to mention that piece of music that was just played. The words are really nice. The melody is really sweet. There's something that's happening in it that you may or may not pay any attention to, which is called harmony. The people singing are singing in harmony with each other. What they're singing in a melodic line is also in harmony with the chord structure that the piano and the guitar are playing. And then the people actually singing harmony with the main melodic line are singing in harmony to that as well. So there's multiple things going on at the same time, and they all work really sweetly together. And harmony is something that in much, if not all, music that really soothes us has a very melodic harmony lines in it. There's something about that, whether we recognize it consciously or not, that's how we're designed to live with each other. And so when music reflects that, there's something that is both super and subconscious in us, but not at the everyday conscious mind level. That recognizes this is it. This is what we're supposed to be doing. Men and women, male and female voices, nature. This is supposed to be working in harmony. That's how we're built. And that's when we have peace. When we're not in harmony, we don't feel peace. So it just came to me as I was listening to that, so I thought I would just share that for a moment. So in addition to release, you might want to just this week think about what kind of harmony or discord you're creating in those you live with and in the nature around you. And see if you can bring more harmony and less discord. So I've been listening the last couple of weeks. Well, first of all, I was sick, which was really fun. But but thank God I'm not anymore. And I didn't get to be here, so I've missed a number of things. And so I've been listening to. I'm really grateful for the YouTube recordings because I listen to them when I don't get to be here. So I've been listening to them, and Wanda's in particular last week, where she was talking about the metaphysical approach to the Bible and to life and so on. I just found a lot of really useful, helpful ideas in that. So if you were here, I hope you are using some of her ideas. And if you weren't here, I hope you listened to them because there are some really good ones in there. One of the things she mentioned is that the Bible is our story, and that Fillmore's taught that as well. So often when people talk about the Bible, including me and others here who talk about it, sometimes it can sound like ancient history because it's ancient history. But sometimes it can sound like it's just ancient history, which it is not. It is not that. It is a living energy. And if you see it, if you work with it that way, and if you actually apply it in your life. And more importantly than that, when you're reading a story about Moses, you're reading a story about Moses and what happened to him and what he did and what he thought and how things occurred. But you're reading something else, and that is your story. And when you're reading about Yeshua or Jesus, you're reading about all the things that he did and the things that happened to him, but you're reading something else. You're reading your life story. In every story in there, there is some part of that story that's about you and what you have gone through or are going through or will go through. And if you start looking at it as, if somebody, I don't know who you think of as being a great filmmaker, but let's say you have somebody in mind that you think is a really tremendous director and filmmaker, and you were told, and it was true, that person made a full-length feature movie about your life with some of the greatest actors living in the world today and one of the greatest script writers, but based on your real life. Would you have maybe a mild interest in seeing it? The Bible was written about you by the greatest author of all time. And a lot of people could care less about whether they read it, which I find odd, to be honest with you. I find that odd. But if I realize that most of us haven't been taught to look at the Bible that way, then it makes more sense to me. And in all the teaching I've done, which has been over 50 years worth now, and in the teaching recently that I've been doing more here and elsewhere on the Bible, and listening to other people teaching about it, the most people that I meet, to be honest with you, what they know about the Bible is not what they have studied and contemplated and applied from it. It's what they've been told it says. And there's a world of difference between those things. So, I want to tell you, I'm going to give you a Bible overview here in hopefully about 20 minutes. And how it kind of connects to your story. So let me just talk about a way that I see that. So first of all, in the very beginning, what's in the very beginning of the Bible? What's the first story in the Bible? Creation story, right, which occurs in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. Do you know they're not the same creation story? There's two different creation stories. So right off the bat, it's like, what? So there's something to contemplate right there. And everything by the end of the second chapter is really hunky-dory, and even in the beginning of the third chapter, things are great. And now man and woman both exist, and they live in the Garden of Eden, and everything is terrific. And before the third chapter is over, everything falls apart. This is one of those writers that gets you hooked in the story right away, you know? So the first part of the story, what exists in the very beginning?
Dark.
True, but before that.
Space.
True, but before that. God. That's it. That's it. There is no light and dark. Light is a creation of God. Just God. And then God creates. So in the beginning, there is one, which is God. Then God creates. What's the first thing God creates? Light. The very first creation. God said, let there be light, and there was light. So just stopping there for a minute. Who has been with you every single breath of your life? And I don't mean God right now, but that's true also. Who's the human being that has been present in every breath of every moment of your life? You. You're the one that has been from the beginning of your life. You're the God of your life. When you create, the first thing you create is an awareness of something. All your creation comes out of your awareness first. You don't create anything without that. So first is the light of awareness. So now we're following the same sequence that the Bible is laying out for us. There's me and my life, and to create, I have to have awareness. This is the Bible story so far. So now God creates. And I'm obviously skipping big sections, but I'm doing major themes here, major Bible themes. So now there's the oneness. There's just one. It's just God. There's nothing else. Do you know in Isaiah, multiple places in Isaiah, and elsewhere, but mostly Isaiah, there's a direct quote and it says, I am the Lord your God, and there is no other. It says that more than once in Isaiah. Here's what it doesn't say, but this is how people read it. People read it as if it says, I am the Lord your God, and there is no other God. It does not say that. It says, I am the Lord your God, and there is no other. There's just God. That's the teaching. In the beginning was one. How many are there now? One. Still. So, out of this oneness comes all the creation, which is very varied, obviously. And then eventually, human souls are put into male and female bodies. And so now you have Adam and Eve in female and male bodies. And they're placed in this Garden of Eden. And in the Garden of Eden, according to the biblical story, everything's great. It's what's called paradise. They have all the food they need without planting it, cultivating it, weeding it, harvesting it. They have all the food they need. They literally see, hear, talk with, and walk with God every day in the garden story. Whether you see and hear God is another issue in where our human consciousness is now, but do you know you still walk with God every single day? The problem is you don't often see or hear it because there are things now in the way of that consciousness. We'll get to that. Everything is good. Do you know that there were animals there too? And that human beings and animals understood one another? And that nobody ate each other? Nobody. Lions didn't eat sheep. Wolves didn't eat rabbits. It didn't happen. They didn't eat each other. Human beings didn't eat bunnies or deer or cows either. Nobody ate each other. That made for a more peaceful environment. So that was good. All right. Then everything is great. And Adam and Eve have this consciousness of oneness. They're aware of God. They're aware of animals. They're aware of one another. They can communicate with each other. There was no enmity between nature and man, no enmity between man and woman. Everything was working in harmony, the way it was designed. Then everything changes in the third chapter. And in the third chapter is what's called the fall of man. And there are lots of ways this has been described. But something happens, and that is that they partake of a forbidden fruit. They eat of something called the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that God said, whatever you do, don't eat that. Anything else is cool. Don't eat that. So what do? They run over and eat that. And then everything changes. And all of a sudden, guess what? Do you know what they don't have awareness of anymore? The oneness and the harmony. They don't have that. Now it's like, oh, you're different than me. And oh my God, you don't have clothes on. Oh my God, I don't have clothes on. And all of a sudden, they have this difference awareness. And the animals are different. And not only are they different, they're afraid of them. What if they hurt me? They haven't hurt you so far, but what if they do now? So we start having a different consciousness than we did before. Why did that consciousness change? Because they ate of the forbidden fruit. Wrong. That's not why it changed. It changed because they did not obey the voice that spoke to them from inside. The voice that would have protected them from that had they just listened to it. But instead, they heard a different voice arise, which was personified in the serpent, saying, but what if God's holding out on you? What if there's more good stuff that God's not giving you? And the reason he's not letting you eat this fruit is because then you would be as powerful as God, and you would know everything, and you'd be just like him. Look at all that you could have that he doesn't want you to have. So go ahead and go for it. That's another voice called ego. I'm more important than God. I know better than God. I know how to make my life work better than God knows how to make my life work. I'm going to get it my way. Any of you ever heard that voice? Yep. That one's not nearly as hard to hear, is it? That one's a pretty loud voice. It was a pretty loud voice in the garden too. And they listened to it. And then what happened is they shifted from a consciousness of oneness in spirit and interconnectedness to a consciousness of sensory awareness. And everything in the sensory world is dualistic. Everything. Right and left nostril, right and left lung, right and left arm, male and female, light and dark, good and bad, life and death. It's all dual. All of it. And that's what the senses register. So if you're locked into sensory awareness, that's your consciousness. Does that make sense? Okay, so now something else happens in the consciousness, and it's still happening. So Adam and Eve now have eaten of this forbidden fruit. They now see things differently than they did before. They've lost a lot of awareness, but they have a different kind of awareness now. And so God, like every day, comes walking through the garden to walk and talk with Adam and Eve. And what do Adam and Eve do? Do you know what they do? They hide. God does not ever, in the Bible, ever hide from us. But multiple times we hide from or turn away from God. So they hide. Why did they hide? They think God was going to smite them? Why did they hide? They were ashamed. Why were they ashamed? Because they knew they had not lived up to their own internal knowing. They had failed to live up to their own standard. They had not listened to their own hearts. They knew that. And that caused the shame. The fear was that the shame would be discovered, and then you wouldn't be lovable. Does that sound familiar? If people really knew about me, nobody would want to be around me. I'm not really good enough. I'm not really lovable. I'm not really okay. I'm not really as good as that guy next to me. I'm not really as good as that woman up there in the front row. I'm not really as good as Wanda. I'm not really as good as whoever. And so I have to hide that I'm not as good, because if you really discover that, you're not going to want anything to do with me. So I have to pretend, and now I start creating masks. I start pretending. I want you to see me like this, so look at me like this. Don't look at me like this. This is me, see? This is me. And we start pretending. And the worst part is we don't just pretend to each other, we start pretending to ourselves. And we start believing our own lie. And then we have a lot of problems. And it usually takes a long time to work through them, because it's a very deep psychological mechanism that this chapter in the third chapter of Genesis is describing the process. That's how we got screwed up. It is still how we get screwed up. Michael has said it more than one occasion when I've heard him teach somewhere, is I've never done anything wrong in my life that I didn't know was wrong before I did it. Now that could be unique to Michael, but I had a lot of resonance with that when he said it. Thinking back on things, well, yeah, I did know better than that, yeah. I just went ahead and did it anyway because I wanted to. That process still works. If I am true to myself, to this inner core, whatever you want to call it, heart, soul, this inner essence, the God in me, the light in me, if I'm true to that, and I'm speaking and acting and living out of that, then even if things don't go well, I'm at peace. But if I don't listen to that, first of all, everything goes wrong when I don't listen to that. But even if it didn't, even if I got some things I wanted, like I cheated, I'm in a business deal with Jeff and I cheat him on it, and I make out really like big time, it's like, wow, I really got this is great. But I know I cheated him. I might have something from having cheated him, but you know what I don't have? I don't have peace anymore. That's the cost. When I'm not true to myself. Every time, that's the cost. And sometimes it's not greed. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes we do things out of fear or don't do things out of fear. Which is, again, part of this story. That's the mechanism. That's how we get enslaved. So now the next part is I'm leaping ahead to when the Hebrew people were enslaved for over 400 years in Egypt. Over 400 years. All countries, I think, this could be an exaggeration. I'm going to put it this way. Almost all countries in the world have practiced slavery. It's been everywhere. All races, all cultures. Slavery is a fact of our world history. And we hate it these days. There's enough awareness to like, that's a bad thing to do. Believe it or not, there wasn't always that awareness. But the light of awareness comes before changes come. So that is, we're aware of that now. So we're really hostile toward the fact that we used to have slaves here, some people still keep slaves, that there's now slave trade and all that horrible stuff that's going on in the world, and sex trade. Horrible stuff, and we hate it, and that's a great thing that we're upset about that. But what we don't often see is we are also the slave masters, and you know who we enslave? ourselves. Almost every day. We enslave because we have to live up to some ego thing that we think we have to be. We're enslaved because we're terrified of what will happen if we don't. If we don't conform to social pressure and peer pressure and political pressure and church pressure and whatever other pressures we all have. That I have to do this way, or something bad will happen to me. So out of fear or out of greed or out of lust or out of any of those things, we behave in ways that are not true to who we are. And every single time we suffer for that. And the more we don't behave true to who we are, there's another thing that happens. People get confused about who they are. Do you see any people in our world being confused about who they are today? Yeah. That happens. So now they're enslaved in Egypt for over 400 years. Do you know what that means, over 400 years? That means that, let's say when Moses was born, and the people of Moses' generation, in his generation, not a single Hebrew alive had ever known anybody who had ever known anybody who had ever known anybody who had ever known anybody that wasn't born a slave. That was their consciousness. They were slaves. That's just the way life is. It wasn't a short 100 years or so of slavery. It was a long time. So Moses now comes along, and he leads people in the great exodus from slavery in Egypt into freedom and eventually to the promised land. Do you know what Moses' name means in Hebrew? It's Moshe in Hebrew. It means to draw out. He drew them out of slavery and brought them into freedom. Do you know what the word Egypt is in Hebrew? Some of you do. It's Mitzrayim. It literally, like today, if you want to talk about the country of Egypt, you say Mitzrayim. That means Egypt. But it has an everyday usage too. Mitzrayim means a place of bondage and constriction. You may not be enslaved in Egypt anymore, but do you have any places in your consciousness that you feel you have bondage and constriction? Or something in you is repressed or suppressed or oppressed? All those pressed words aren't very good, are they? Let's throw those out. So Moses leads them into freedom. And when they're now free of Egypt, and you'd think, okay, everything is great now. Actually, they wander around lost for another 40 years or so. And so that's also our story. You suddenly come to a church like this or somewhere, and you realize that a lot of what you've been told maybe isn't really right. And that some of the things you've been said you should believe, you really don't believe, or they don't really work for you. So now you have this freedom of choice, and you think, oh, I can freely choose something different. By the way, in Greek, the word heresy, you know what the Greek word of heresy translates as literally? It means choice. Yeah. So you now have this choice. And now you have this freedom to choose what you believe and how you're going to live. And the first thing you do is, like the Jews following Moses, going, I don't know what to do with this. I'm free. Well, who are you going to be? I don't know. What are you going to do? You got any ideas? I don't know. And so that's part of our story too, is we enslave ourselves. And here's the good news of the story. Moses comes along. You have them in your life too. Somebody has come along in your life and drawn you out of yourself, drawn you out of the places you're stuck, drawn you out of the places you can't stand to be but don't know how to get away from, drawn you into light from darkness. There are people in your life that have done that for you, aren't there? Aren't there people still doing that for you? And aren't you hopefully in turn trying to do that for other people? Part of the Bible story is that every villain in the Bible and every hero is us. We're not just Moses, we're also Pharaoh. We're the Pharaoh that enslaves us, and we're the Moses that liberates us. And in all the stories, we're the people that the prophets are sent to because they've screwed up so badly and turned their back on God and aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing anymore and aren't true to themselves and don't even know who they are anymore, so God sends a prophet to help them. We're those people. You know who we also are? We're the prophet that's sent. And you know who you're sent to as a prophet? First, to you. Be a prophet to yourself and start speaking the truth through the deception in you, through the false beliefs in you. And second, you're sent as a prophet to every person who's in your every single day life. Whether that's your family, your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors, you're sent there. It's not an accident you live next to the neighbor you live next to. It's not an accident you're in the family you're in. So, this is all part of your story. I've got to zip along because I'm almost done. So, after Moses, there's a whole bunch of other stuff happens, and then we move on, and we get to the prophets. And the prophets are people who are sent with a message. And the message basically is, turn back to God. Whatever is wrong in your culture, whatever is wrong in your life, whatever is wrong in your body, turn back to God. Return back to God. That's pretty much the message of most of the prophets. So far, I'll have one more piece, but so far, there's one, and everything is great. Then we all live together in harmony, and everything is great. So the idea that God is one, and that God's essence is in us, and therefore we are one and we are good. Does that sound like a familiar teaching to you? Because if it doesn't, you better come to some more programs. That's kind of the message, isn't it? Yeah. So the first two principles of unity is 5. Yeah, exactly. So the series of prophets come, and they remind us that no matter how stuck you are, no matter how much suffering you're enduring, no matter how confused you are, there's a way out. And it's not simply through human agency. You can use affirmations, and they're all fine and dandy. But unless you have the power of God in your affirmations, they're just mental exercises. An affirmation is not something to convince yourself. It is a statement of a reality you recognize. I'm going to say that again. Affirmations are not to convince yourself. That makes it a mental exercise. Affirmations are your statement of a reality that you recognize as true. God is one. That's not a hope. That's not a trying to convince myself. God is love. That's not trying to convince myself. That is a statement of something I know is real. So saying that is a very powerful thing. Believing it is a less powerful thing. But it's still good. But you want to move your affirmations from the point of trying to convince myself to I'm stating reality for me. That's where the power of those come in. Okay, so moving on, last piece. We're leaping ahead from all these other things. And now Jesus comes on the scene. So we have Yeshua come on the scene. And what does he teach that's different than Moses? I'm not even going to ask you really to do that, but just think about it a second. Here's the answer, nothing. He doesn't teach anything different than Moses did. He really doesn't. Same message. And what did he do that none of the prophets had done before him? Isaiah raised people from the dead, healed the blind, had miracles. Lots of other people did. I'm not saying those aren't extraordinary, but I'm saying he didn't do something different, except one thing. All those teachings from Genesis 1 up through Jesus in the Bible, all those teachings that are ways of us learning about ourselves, all those teachings, he took all those teachings and did two things. He said, all of this, all the law, all the prophets, all the messages, all the commandments, all of this is fulfilled if you love each other. And then second, he said, watch me, that's how I live. That's it. He lived our potential, and we often don't. And his message was not, look at me, I'm the only one who can live this potential. His message was exactly the opposite. Look at me, if I can do this, you can do this. That's the message. That's why it was the good news. How good a news is it that somebody, and only that somebody, ever in all of history can do it? That's not good news. At least to me. The hope that I might be able to approach that, that's good news to me. So, if any of that sounds familiar to you, like things you've experienced in your life or struggle with in your life or experiencing in your life, there are things in the Bible that are helpful to us, even in really practical ways. There are things about how to deal with people you're upset with in the Bible. There are things about how to deal with forgiveness in the Bible. There are things that help us if we learn them and if we apply them. So I'm going to just sing a short song for you as a kind of a meditation, then we'll have a moment of silence or two at the end of it. This is a song I wrote a long time ago. Actually, I wrote it for Passover. It's called Come to the Table. And the idea, this is my take on it. My take on what Yeshua would like is not for you to worship him because he did not worship himself. He worshiped our Father. That's what he would like you to do. And second of all, he lived true to who he was. That's what he would like you to do also. And third of all of the commandments and all of the teachings and all of the admonitions that he gave were not rules and were not judgments. They were invitations. You're invited to come to the table where I sit and partake of the banquet that I have. So, here we go. So you can listen to the words or not listen to the words, but just take a little moment inside quietly to consider some of the stories in the Bible and how they're really for and about you. Come to the table and hear the story of our struggles and liberation. Come learn the history, it's your own story. You will discover the hidden glory of the Lord, of the Lord, of the Lord. Come to the table, gaze on its beauty, calling you to partake of its bounty. Dine on its goodness, drink from its fountain. Finish your journey out from the mountain of the Lord, of the Lord, of the Lord. Trapped by an endless sea, pursued by what you fear. Watch the waters divide before you pass. The path of the Lord now appears, now appears, now appears. rest for the weary, calling you to step into your freedom. Come to his table, candles are glowing, let them awaken your inner knowing of the Lord, of the Lord, of the Lord. Come to the table, we are the story of God's love, and we are his glory. Come to his table. Come to the table. Come to his table. Come. So within yourself for just a moment, consider that you have been invited to partake of not only a great feast, but a great consciousness. A consciousness Yeshua called the kingdom of God, where you recognize the oneness and the interconnectedness, where you experience the love, and where you find peace. It is not far off. It is right here. And everything is ready. But you're the guest, and only you decide to walk through the door and sit at the table, or to turn away. Even if you've never done it before, in this moment of silence, walk through the door and take your seat. And if you have ever had a Moses in your life who opened the door for you, who showed you the way to what you want, who showed you how to live the potential of who you are, then be grateful. And perhaps consider, in return, being an opener of doors for those who come after you. We thank you for all those who have opened our doors, Lord. And we thank you most of all for the gift of this life. Amen.